Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Bhagavad-gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Chapter 4, text 11. A well-known verse. Ye yatha mang prapadyante tangs tathaiva bhajamyaham mama vartanuvartante manushyah partha sarvashaha. Lord Krishna says, as all surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. Everyone follows my path in all respects, O son of Pritha. Purport, everyone is searching for Krishna in the different aspects of his manifestations. Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is partially realized in his impersonal Brahma-jyoti effulgence and as the all-pervading supersoul dwelling within everything, including the particles of atoms. But Krishna is fully realized only by his pure devotees. Consequently, Krishna is the object of everyone's realization, and thus anyone and everyone is satisfied according to one's desire to have him. In the transcendental world also, Krishna reciprocates with his pure devotees in the transcendental attitude, just as the devotee wants him. One devotee may want Krishna as Supreme Master, another as his personal friend, another as his son, and still another as his lover. Krishna rewards all the devotees equally according to their different intensities of love for him. In the material world, the same reciprocations of feelings are there, and they are equally exchanged by the Lord with the different types of worshippers. The pure devotees, both here and in the transcendental abode, associate with him in person and are able to render personal service to the Lord, and thus derive transcendental bliss in his loving service. As for those who are impersonalists and who want to commit spiritual suicide by annihilating the individual existence of the living entity, Krishna helps also by absorbing them into his effulgence. Such impersonalists do not agree to accept the eternal blissful personality of Godhead. Consequently, they cannot relish the bliss of transcendental personal service to the Lord, having extinguished their individuality. Some of them, who are not firmly situated even in the impersonal existence, return to this material field to exhibit their dormant desires for activities. They are not admitted into the spiritual planets, but they are again given a chance to act on the material planets. For those who are fruitive workers, the Lord awards the desired results of their prescribed duties as the Yogeshvara, and those who are yogis seeking mystic powers are awarded such powers. In other words, everyone is dependent for success upon his mercy alone, and all kinds of spiritual processes are but different degrees of success on the same path. Unless, therefore, one comes to the highest perfection of Krishna consciousness, all attempts remain imperfect, as is stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Akama sarva kamo va moksha kama udaridhihi tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. Whether one is without desire, the condition of the devotees, or is desirous of all fruitive results, or is after liberation, one should with all efforts try to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead for complete perfection, culminating in Krishna consciousness. All of what goes on in the name of religion in this world can be categorized in two main categories. Those which are exclusive and those which are inclusive. Exclusive means our way is the only way. And inclusive means, well, there are all kinds of different ways, different approaches. And even within religions, there are branches which tend to be more exclusive or more inclusive, but generally those which are called the Abrahamic religions. They all recognize Abraham as their patriarch. They tend to say, this is it. If you follow this, you're saved. If not, you're finished. No hope. Whereas Hinduism, for want of a better term, tends to be much broader, up to the limit of Joto Mot Toto Pot, which comes to mean, well, practically whatever you think, it's okay. You can do whatever you like. Which might seem to be supported by this verse from Bhagavad-gita, which we just read. Krishna says, everyone is on my path. Does that mean that anyone can do whatever they like, however they like, and it's all the same? Clearly not. Otherwise there wouldn't be any need for Krishna to speak Bhagavad-gita. He has some definite instructions there in Bhagavad-gita. But there is some sense of inclusivism. In terms of religious studies, inclusivism means that, well, we think our path is the best, but others can be good to some extent. So, this is also sometimes called narrow-mindedness and broad-mindedness. And in the modern Western world, generally broad-mindedness is considered to be very good. And narrow-mindedness is considered to be very dangerous because it gets people fighting each other. People saying that. Some people say, our path is right. No, our path is right. And then they fight. And they think, well, it doesn't matter if we kill these other people because anyway they're going to hell because they're not following our path. So might as well just send them a little earlier. Make the world a better place. The less of them, the better. So, is that the conclusion of Bhagavad-gita? Krishna is telling Arjuna to fight. What do we find from Bhagavad-gita? Well, we find, it may seem almost like conflicting messages. Here in this verse, Manusha Patas, Mamavart Manu Vartante, Manusha Patas Sarvashaha. Krishna says, everyone's on my path. But then again, we find verses, famous verse, Mamekam Sharanam Raja. Krishna says, surrender to me only. Yashastra vidimutsrija vartate kamakarataha nasa siddhim avapnoti nasukam naparam gatim. Krishna says, those who just act as they like, according to their own whim, their own desire, they cannot attain perfection. They cannot attain happiness. They cannot attain the supreme destination. So it seems that Krishna is giving both kinds of messages in Bhagavad-gita. So what is the conclusion? Hinduism, which is derived, you could say, vaguely from Bhagavad-gita, tends to be very broad, very embracing. In the Western world, there's also what's called New Age, the idea that there are all kinds of different ideas and spirituality, and you have to find your own way and get your own path and mix things up a bit, eclecticism. So this tends to be very broad-minded, and Hinduism is said to be very broad-minded. Would you agree with that? Tends to be very broad-minded. We can accept. But on the other hand, there are some things in Hinduism, especially which doesn't seem to be so broad-minded. The caste system. Generally, in the Western countries, if you say Hinduism, people think caste system, and they have a very bad opinion of Hinduism because of the caste system, as if that's the only thing it's the only factor in the whole of Hindu society, notwithstanding all the problems the social problems that they have in their society. So that casteism, that's very narrow-minded. And especially those of the upper caste, they look down on others and they may consider them untouchable. And within Hinduism, well, we should say Vedic culture, but now it's practically, if we say Hinduism, it's correct what today is called Hinduism. But it's not actually a Shastric term. There's no. I said this a few times in the last few months when I was speaking among Hindus, that the word Hindu is nowhere in Shastra. It's not a Sanskrit word at all. There's men there, 70 years old, well-educated men, are surprised. Really? Oh, we never knew that. It's not from Shastra. But in Vedic culture, there has been, not now, but there has been a very strong polemic tradition. That means arguing over philosophy with Shastra as the basis. And if you hear the histories, the life histories of the major acharyas who have shaped the spiritual life of India in this Kali Yuga, that means Shankara, Ramanuja, Madhva, they all engaged in scriptural debate with the idea not as some kind of intellectual game, like you play a game of chess or something like that. People don't play chess anymore. They play video games. Right? Chess, takes too much brain power for people today. So, okay, people play video games and, well, maybe they take it very seriously. But this discussions that the acharyas and their followers were engaged in, they're very serious. There were conditions like either whoever's defeated you, either accept the one who defeated you as your guru, giving up your philosophy, or you just die. That's all. They took it very seriously, because the whole purpose was satya anusandhan, satya nidarshan. Understanding, coming to the point of understanding what is the truth. That there is reality. There is, sat is distinguished from asat. Reality is distinguished from falsity or non-reality. So, although in one sense there is plurality of paths within the Vedic culture, which Krishna also addresses here in Bhagavad-gita, he speaks of karmis, gyanis, no tolerance of people with cell phones on. Throw them out of the window. The cell phone, not the person. If it goes off twice, then throw the person out also. We're not broad-minded when it comes to cell phones going off in the class. You can have a good business. You stand outside and collect all the cell phones. Collect all the cell phones that are thrown out. So, is Vedic culture broad-minded or narrow-minded? Well, really it doesn't fall in any of these categories. It's a different approach altogether. It is trying to understand what is the truth, but also realizing that not everyone is ready for the full blast of the truth in all respects. Therefore we find that although Krishna ultimately says, Mame kam sharanam raja, sarvadhaman parityaja, Mame kam sharanam raja, give up all varieties of that which is conceived of as dharma and simply surrender to me, we find in the 12th chapter of Gita, Krishna, he offers various levels of God realization. Krishna says, you just be fully absorbed in me. If you can't do that, you follow the rules and regulations of Bhakti Yoga. And he offers various alternatives. You can work for me, or you can do some good work. He discusses in Bhagavad-gita, Krishna says, Yanti Deva Rata Devan, he discusses those who are demigod worshippers, Pitrin Yanti Prachivrataha, though he discusses the worshippers of the Pitris, the forefathers. He also mentions Bhutani Yanti Bhuteja, those who worship ghosts. Madhyajena opi yanti mam, and he says those who worship me, they come to me. So he gives a gradation. He says there is sattva-gun, rajoguna, tamoguna, and one sattva-gun is definitely better. And beyond that, mangchayo vihabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatityaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. Beyond that, there's the spiritual platform, beyond the three modes of material nature, on the platform of service to Krishna. But it's not that someone who is in the lower modes of nature is completely rejected forever. There's a chance for them also. So in Krishna consciousness, we accept that there is not one fixed particular way to approach God. Even if one does so in a somewhat mistaken way, that can be considered some kind of start. Still, there's a lot of difference between being a pure devotee of Krishna and not being a pure devotee of Krishna. Those who are pure devotees of Krishna, they go to the spiritual world. Those who are not pure devotees of Krishna, they don't. And it's much better to go to the spiritual world than not to go to the spiritual world. So there is a difference. Sometimes we see that right here in Bhagavad-gita, Krishna says, he mentions that those who worship different demigods, they worship me, but improperly. Yepi anya devata bhakta yajante shraddhayanvita tepi mameva kauntaya yajantya vidhi purvakam. Krishna says those who worship all the different demigods, in one sense they're worshipping me, but improperly, not in a proper way. So he doesn't totally reject that, but he does say, Kamaistai hrita jnana prapadyantenya devataha. Those who worship different demigods, they do so being impelled by material desire. And Krishna states that material desire is our enemy. And therefore he tells Arjuna, Jahi shatrum mahabaho kama rupa durasadam. He tells Arjuna to kill the enemy of karma, material desire, which is a very formidable enemy. So it's different perspectives on the same thing. Just to give an example, if I might ask someone, are you chanting Hare Krishna regularly? He says, yes. How many rounds a day? 2 rounds. I may say, very good, very nice. He's made a start. He's a newcomer. I may ask someone else, how many rounds are you chanting every day? He says, 2 rounds. I say, why? What's that? You took initiation, you said you chant 16 rounds, you're only chanting 2 rounds. So it's the same thing, but for someone who's coming up, very good. And for someone who's already come up to the higher level and they've come down, now that's not very good. But even then, there's someone who's chanting 2 rounds, you could say, only 2 rounds, come on, you have to improve. You have to chant someone who's a newcomer. So why not chant 60 rounds? Push them. And someone who's come down to 2 rounds when they're previously chanting 60 rounds, they say, okay, well, at least do something. Don't just give up your beads altogether. Retire. Go and put your beads into retirement. So, it's the same thing, but there are different perspectives on it. Ultimately, the perspective is we should all surrender to Krishna and give up all material desires. That's it. And everything else means mrityu samsara vartmani. We come back to this world of birth and death. But we can encourage people also. They're doing something, they're on the path, they're making some progress. So there's no one perspective. If we say there's an absolute perspective, then just surrender to Krishna. But in this relative world, we have to be somewhat adjustable. As Krishna himself is adjustable to some extent. Krishna accepts the offerings of so many different people. He comes to this world just like Tirupati Balaji is always called Tirupati Balaji, although actually he's on Tirumala. Anyway, it's more or less the same thing. So almost not only Tirupati Balaji, but practically all the temples, almost everyone comes and says, give me this, give me that, let me pass my exams, let me get a better job, so many material desires. And he accepts. It's not what Krishna teaches Arjuna in Bhagavad-gita. Krishna teaches pure devotional service, but he accepts at some level. All right, make a start. So, although from the absolute platform we should all completely surrender to Krishna, on the other hand, if anyone is doing something God-conscious, then all right, okay, it's from one perspective, yes, it's good. So, we don't say that, well, this is it, this is the only way. In one sense it's true. Haren nama, haren nama, haren nama eva kevalam kalo nastreva, nastreva, nastreva gatiranyata. In this Kali Yuga, the Sankirtan movement of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the only way for spiritual realization. But if someone is chanting some other name, just like Srila Prabhupada said, the Muslims, they may chant according to their understanding. Christians may chant according to their understanding. They'll also make some progress. So, nevertheless, we say means according to Shastric understanding, some things are very bad. It's not that, well, everything's okay, and anyone who's religious, okay, it's all right. And there are some things which are very bad, just like cow slaughter. The followers of Vedic culture, they cannot accept that cow slaughter is acceptable. In a time of emergency, there may be, practically any time of emergency you can do practically anything, but to have slaughterhouses, regular slaughterhouses, not only of cows but of any animal, it's something very sinful and very bad. Whereas in some religions, they promote, yes, you have to kill the animals on a certain day. It's part of your religious system. Although Jesus Christ himself, we don't have any record that he taught that, but there is a convention that on Christmas Day, the Christians in the country that I'm from, they kill turkeys one day a year. Turkey is a kind of oversized chicken. So they think that's part of their religion. And now Eid is coming up. So many sheep or rams are sent from all over the world to Makkah to get ritually slaughtered. And they think this is something very religious. Although we can't accept that this is on the highest level of religiosity. We're not going to go outside in the streets here in Kuwait and preach that. That would not be a very practical thing to do. But at least among ourselves we can understand. And we say, well, you Krishna devotees, you say meat eating is bad, but most of the people in this country, they think it's something not only very good, but should be done as part of their religion. So how to understand who's right and who's wrong? Well, we can apply the teachings of Bhagavad-gita regarding the modes of material nature, sattva-gun, rajagun, tamagun, that religious system in which there is unnecessary violence toward others. Clearly that can't be considered to be on as high a level as that in which there is adveshta sarva bhutanam, there is non-envy of all living beings. So by neutral, even without taking, if we take Bhagavad-gita, someone may say, well, why Bhagavad-gita? We'll take our scripture. But we can understand this from a neutral perspective, that kind of religion in which there is pain inflicted on others unnecessarily, that cannot be a very high level of religion. So, we're in a world in which there are all kinds of highly sinful activities which are allowed by religionists or even promoted by them. There are so many examples. Srila Prabhupada, he gave the 4 regulative principles. So in any religious system in which animal slaughter is allowed or promoted, in which contraception, abortion, all these kind of things, gambling, in some churches they raise funds by gambling, or they have gambling on their premises. So we cannot say that these are very good. In fact, they're very bad. And although some people may engage in them, and we may say, yes, well, it's good that they're religious, but on the other hand, we can't say that it's good that they are killing animals. But we have to live with it, because unfortunately we're not in a position to stop it. I was just listening, just before coming here, to one lecture in which Srila Prabhupada was saying the government should be very strict. They should stop all sinful activity. The Kshatriya should be so strong. If anyone is found stealing, immediately cut off both his hands. Sounds like Sharia law. But actually, if it's, Srila Prabhupada explained, if that is done, that will stop thousands of other thieves. So you may say it's very harsh for the thief, but for the benefit of society, that should be done. Otherwise, you put them in prison for 3 months and let them out, and again they'll go on stealing. So, this kind of strictness, Srila Prabhupada recommended that on the basis of Shastra. The government should be very, very strict, and not in the name of being broad-minded. They should not allow all kinds of criminality to go on. Otherwise, what's happened at the present time, in the name of democracy, the criminals have captured the government. That's very apparent in India. Now this Lalu, not the original Lalu, but someone by the name of Lalu Prasad, he got 5 years in prison. 5 years? Why 5 years? Because he's cheated the people in a huge amount. So he got 5 years. At least it's a precedent for the cheating politicians to go to prison. But actually, they've cheated so badly. Then they should all be shot. Actually, these cheating politicians. Then otherwise, how to stop this? People may calculate. Well, if I get caught, I'll get 5 years, but then I'll have so much money. So, not a bad deal. And even in prison, they'll be having first-class treatment. And if his party comes in power, then they'll release him also. So they're encouraging criminality. Anyway, we're getting off the topic here. But the point is that in one sense, we can be very broad-minded, but in another sense, we have to be not exactly narrow-minded, but strict also. That's in the Vedic society, people, they can follow different modes of worship. And meat eating is allowed actually in Vedic culture, but under restriction. People who are in the mode of ignorance, they can worship some deity to which an animal can be sacrificed, not keeping slaughterhouses. Kshatriyas, they also hunt in the forest, and then they bring the animals which are offered in yajna. So there is some allowance for it, but it's not encouraged. So, broad-mindedness is required. There are different laws for different people. Brahmanas, they're not under the law. Why is that? Because they're expected to act in a manner that is anyway in accord with the law. But if they take advantage of that and say, I'm a Brahmana, I can do whatever I like, then they come under the law, because they're not actually acting like a Brahmana. So it's quite a complex understanding. It's not that every shoe size fits everyone. That the understanding has to be multifaceted for the benefit of the whole of society, and judging individuals according to their particular position. That's there also to some extent in law all over the world. A child would not be punished for some minor crime. If a 6-year-old, if he steals something, he wouldn't be punished in the same way that a 26-year-old would be. So there's some flexibility still. So, as we are now trying to be devotees within the modern world, we have to see how to adjust to that. We are enjoined not to simply withdraw from the world. If we withdraw from the world, we can maybe set up an ashram and live life according to our own rules, as long as there's no severe infringement of the laws. We can't say this is our ashram and we'll do murders inside it, but we can conduct, if we're in a country like India, which is somewhat broad-minded in this regard, we can conduct it according to our own rules, but we have to operate within the world. And so we have to interact with different kinds of people. And if we always just go up to people and say, well, you're all nonsense, even if they are all nonsense, there's going to be no communication. We're not going to be able to impress on them the teachings of Bhagavad-gita. So even in our personal dealings, we're going to have to be somewhat accommodating. And what to speak of all of you who work in jobs, and you have to deal with people in a human manner, according to the norms of modern society, not in a religious manner. Maybe to some extent, you can tell people if they want, or they know, for instance, they might not invite you to their home for their daughter's birthday party or whatever, because they know that you're a vegetarian and they're not. So there's some understanding is there. But to a large extent, we, especially those who are employed, they have to act according to the norms of modern society, which is one major reason that Srila Prabhupada wanted to set up communities in which devotees can live according to our own culture and our own understanding that we derive from Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. So, as practicing devotees, living in a very confused world, which doesn't understand or appreciate much of what the devotees aspire for. How should we act? Should we be very accommodating and open to everything, or should we be very closed, or should we be exclusive or inclusive? Well, obviously to some extent we have to be or maybe to a large extent, in our practical behavior, we have to be very accommodating. You might be surprised to hear this, seeing as I made a book called On Speaking Strongly in Srila Prabhupada's Service, in which I wrote that we have to be very clear and straightforward in our preaching, but in our general behavior, often we have to adjust. But we shouldn't adjust to the point that we lose our essentiality. Recently I was at a program somewhere in England, Milton Keynes. It was the devotees had hired a hall belonging to the Quaker religion. It's a branch of Christianity. Or at least it used to be a branch of Christianity, because it said, they had different posters on the walls saying what is their religion, and it said that, they wrote something to this effect that, we we believe in God and everyone has their approach to God and we are mostly inspired by Christianity. They didn't say they're Christians. They've become so accommodating that they don't even say they're Christians anymore. They say we accept all faiths, but we're mostly inspired by Christianity. So practically they became Hindus almost. And in their meetings they just sit quietly, and then if anyone wants to say something, they can say something. There's no hierarchy. There's no one who's supposed to be more advanced than others. It's just God speaking through you, which means there's no clear direction. They became so accommodating and so democratic and so egalitarian that they have no fixed path. It's just you all come together and you sit together, and then if God inspires you, you say something. That's all. So that's accommodationism to the extreme. Then there's the other extreme, that there are many people who need to feel that, yeah, I got it, I'm on the right path, and this is it, and everything else is wrong, and we are saved. All 3.5 members of our movement, we are the ones who are saved, and everyone else is going to hell. There are people who preach like that. They really feel, they have a psychological need, it seems, to think that we are right. Everyone else is completely and absolutely, in all respects, unquestionably wrong. And they may feel so strongly about this that they feel it's completely right for them to go and kill people because they don't believe the same thing that they do. And maybe that's one of the reasons why in the Western world there's a strong wave of atheism. And the new atheists, as they call themselves, they protest that this religion, it's just a curse. If we see the history of religion, it's just Christians killing Muslims, Muslims killing Christians, Christians killing Christians, Muslims killing Muslims. Where does it all end? Just piles of bodies. That's all. Let's say. On one hand, you have Muslims who are trying to convert non-Muslims. On the other hand, you have Muslims killing each other, and that's very prominent at the present time in Pakistan and in Syria. The Sunni Shia divide, and so there are very different approaches. One is very broad, yes, everything is wonderful, whatever you do, we all love each other. And then the other hand, you have those who are, no, this is it, this is the only way, and if you don't agree, well, we've got a bomb for you. So, how to negotiate all of this? Those who are accommodation, they say, well, let's all get together and appreciate each other and tolerate each other. But there are others who say, no, we won't appreciate you. We don't accept you. We don't accept that you can approach God in many ways. It's this way, the only way, and if you don't agree, then kill you. So what's the solution to all of this? Well, Krishna consciousness, the approach is quite different. It's not a matter of believing only one way or believing in many ways. It's a question of that satya anusandhan, searching the truth. What is actually the truth? What is the reality? Of course, to deal with those who are exclusivists, they won't even listen to what you have to say. They're practically impossible to deal with at all. For those who say, yes, we accept all paths, everything is good, and if you say, well, what about the truth? What's the actual truth? They're also impossible. At least they won't kill you, mostly. But they're also impossible because they have this idea that, well, there is no ultimately defined truth. Truth is self-defined. Whatever you think, whatever you like, it's all okay. So both extremes, they're practically impossible to deal with. They're both symptomatic of the mode of ignorance. They're a long, long way away from being actually very serious to understand what is the truth. If they think that God loves us, but they don't stop to think, those who are extremists, they don't think that, well, God's love is... Probably there are many better ways to express God's love than to blow people up. Doesn't seem like a very loving thing to do. On the other hand, those who are extremely broad-minded, they take all paths to be the same, and in this way they also deny God, because they deny what are God's instructions to us, and they make the idea that, well, God you can just in any way you like, and you can take God in any way you like, and in this way they deny God's own implicit personality. He has a specific personality. But those who are nirvisheshvadi, they do not accept any particular understanding of God. He has his own particularities. He is Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janna Vallabha Girivaradhari. There are certain particularities about him that makes him who he is. He's not, for instance, Durga Madhava. He's Radha Madhava. Durga is the wife of Lord Shiva. So there is a difference. He's Kunja Bihari. He's not Desert Bihari or oil field Bihari, as in this country. There are deserts and oil fields and not much else. Cities that have been built in the desert, and roads and the sea. But Krishna is Kunja Bihari. He's Gopi Janna Vallabha. He's not Camel Janna Vallabha or anything. There are certain particularities that make him who he is. He is a person. But those who want to be very broad-minded, they deny Krishna's personality because they think, well, if there's any specific personality about the Supreme, then he is as he is, as stated in the Bible. I am who I am. So, he is who he is. And we just can't imagine him in any way we like. But that's actually the relationship between God and everyone else. He's supreme, and we are supposed to adjust to him. Not that we adjust him to what we like. That becomes impersonalism. So there are many complex discussions about this. Srila Prabhupada spoke very strongly to establish the truth, no doubt. He condemned all that was wrong, but at the same time he was also pragmatic. He didn't, for instance, regarding Islam, which at that time when Srila Prabhupada was preaching in the 1960s and 1970s, Islam was not what it is today. It was not very prominent in the world. But nevertheless, Srila Prabhupada didn't directly criticize it at all, practically. He did criticize Christianity, which was prominent in the world and is still prominent in the world. But Srila Prabhupada is very tactful in that regard, maybe knowing that it's a hot subject. If you say anything about Islam, then you can get in a lot of trouble, and they can be very harmful for our preaching efforts, for whatever reason. Srila Prabhupada, he didn't criticize that. In ISKCON today, there are a variety of approaches, which is practically inevitable, because there are many different devotees within the Krishna conscious movement, and different people means different opinions, but still we have to be fixed on what is the ultimate reality. We can't say that just everything is all one, and any way anyone does devotional service, it's all the same. We are warned about that. Shruti smriti purana adi pancharatra vidhing vina aikantiki hare bhakti utpatayaiva kalpate. We are warned that in executing devotional service to Krishna, we have to follow the Shastras. And if we don't do so, then our so-called devotion will not actually be beneficial to ourselves or anyone else. It'll actually cause a disturbance in human society. So everything has to be according to Shastra. There are certain things which devotees have to do if they're going to be devotees of Krishna on any serious level. There are 4 regulative principles, minimum 16 rounds. We should rise early. We should take only Krishna prasadam. These are all rules and regulations for devotees. We can't say that, well, it doesn't matter whether you follow the rules or you don't follow the rules, it's all the same. There's actually a very narrow spectrum if we're going to be serious devotees. We have to accept Srila Prabhupada as those who are members of ISKCON have to accept Srila Prabhupada as the founder Acharya and not just put his picture on the altar. We have to know what his instructions are and try to follow them. And Srila Prabhupada was a guru in the true sense of the term. Means he instructed, he gave instructions, he instructed at every moment, this should be done, this should not be done. So we don't want to recreate Srila Prabhupada as the nice guru smiling in a picture on the wall, and that's the beginning and end of our discipleship. We offer some incense and that's it, finished. And we expect Srila Prabhupada's blessings, but we don't want to follow what he says. So, Srila Prabhupada, his pragmaticism and his broad-mindedness combined with his burning desire to give Krishna to everyone, we could say that the manifestation of this is his desire to establish Varnashram, in which there is a class of brahmanas who follow very strictly, and there are other kshatriyas, they have more allowances, vaishyas, they have more allowances, shudras, they have more allowances, and even outside of shudras, there are those who really don't have to follow anything at all. They're known as chandals, mlechas, but they can also be invited to take prasadam and to chant the holy name. But some people should follow very strictly. And everyone should follow, but some should follow very strictly. They should be the brahmanas, and they should be recognized as spiritual leaders, not that we're all the same. Those who are strictly following, strictly studying, who are fixed, brahmanishtam, fixed in the knowledge of the Vedas, they should speak clearly the absolute truth. But practically we have to accept that not everyone will be Krishna conscious. We can speak to them, tell them, this is the right path, you should follow, but if everyone doesn't follow, then some allowance should be made for them. Let everyone come and join the kirtan. If everyone doesn't immediately stop eating meat and this and that, alright, never mind. Anyway, come to the kirtan. But not that we'll have the meat eater cooking and we'll offer to Krishna. No. Even if he cooks vegetarian food, we cannot allow that should be offered to the deity. There are rules, there are standards. But to help people to gradually advance, we can bring people in step by step. Or maybe even in this lifetime, some people, they won't get beyond a certain stage. So we have to be accommodating for that also. We can't say that everything is on the same level and everything is all okay. But somehow or other, if people are chanting Hare Krishna, or even if they're within their own religious system, at least if they believe in God and they have that faith, then we can encourage that also. It's not that we have to fight with everybody at every moment. We should fight. Preaching means fighting. But not that we have to fight at every moment. discretion is the better part of valor. We should choose our fights carefully. So, everyone is on Krishna's path in all respects. No one can be outside of Krishna because Krishna is everywhere. Everything is in Krishna. Maya tatamidam sarvam jagada vyakta murtina. This whole material cosmos is a manifestation of Krishna, of Krishna's energies. Krishna is outside everything and inside everything. So in one sense, no one is separate from Krishna. And in one sense, everyone is being overseen by Krishna. So in this sense, we accept that no one is separate from Krishna, but still there is a difference between godly behavior and ungodly behavior, which Krishna describes in the 16th chapter of Bhagavad-gita. There is the Daiva Sampat, the qualities of the godly people, and there is the Asuric Sampat, the qualities of the demoniac people. Dambo, Darpo, Mimanascha, Krodha, Parashamevacha, Agyana, Chabhijatasya, Partha, Sambadam, Asuri. Pride, arrogance, conceit, harshness, ignorance. These are characteristic of demoniac people. And abhayam sattva sangshuddhya jnana yoga vyavastati danam damascha yagyasya swadhyayas tapa arjava. There's a list of the qualities of the saintly people. They are, anyway, you can understand, unless you're Tamil, you can probably understand all these words. Abhayam, in High Tamil, that will come also. Yeah. Sattva sangshuddhya, maybe you don't understand this. It means purified existence. Abhayam sattva sangshuddhya, jnana yoga vyavastitihi, being situated in jnana yoga. So like there are godly qualities, there are demoniac qualities, and Krishna, he exhorts us to cultivate the godly qualities. And ultimately, the ultimate stage of godliness is mamekam sharanam vraja, surrender to Krishna only. So Krishna is demanding, surrender to me only. At the same time, those who are not going to do that, all right, some level, come into Krishna consciousness. There's a well-known anecdote from Srila Prabhupada in 1966 in New York City. He was preaching Krishna consciousness in the beginning of his movement when hardly a few people were coming. The Krishna consciousness movement was not known all over the world. He was in a very bad area of New York preaching because why was he there? Because he didn't have anywhere else to go. Somehow Krishna directed him there. So during his lecture, one drunken man came in. Drunken means habitual drunkard, someone who's drunk 24 hours a day. These people, they live on the street, they're filthy, dirty, and somehow they get some food and they beg some money and they get cheap wine and they drink it. And there's the very lowest end of human society. So during Prabhupada's lecture, Srila Prabhupada's lecture, one of these people came in and he mumbled something, as such people do, because they're not in proper control of their minds. And then he put down 2 rolls of toilet paper on the window ledge and he walked out again. Now, toilet paper for Srila Prabhupada has no use because civilized people don't use toilet paper. Although in the modern world, they think it's civilized to use toilet paper. But actually, anyway, you all know, I hope, maybe the next generation of Indians won't. Maybe I should say for their benefit, that after passing, you wipe with your left hand with water, you clean up everything, then you take bath. But in the Western world, you smear it with some paper and then you just walk out. And if you're more hygienic, you wash your hands. Not everyone does so. So this bum, as they're called, these alcoholics, he brought that in, and Srila Prabhupada, he said, he has begun his devotional service. He made some offering. It's completely useless. Srila Prabhupada has no use of it, but Srila Prabhupada's vision was that through his almost completely covered consciousness, this man has some motive to offer something to the devotees of Krishna. And Prabhupada kindly accepted it. So that's a very broad vision. With his own disciples, he might be very, well, maybe not so much in the beginning. But sometimes he'll be very strong because the Guru has to be strong. Shishya means who's under the shashan, anushashan, under the discipline of the Guru. So to teach them, he has to be very strong. So on one hand, it may be very exclusive. No, do it like this. Do it right. Get it right. On the other hand, it may be very broad. Oh, someone has offered some toilet paper. Very nice. Now, if Srila Prabhupada is offering, someone heard that story and then they got initiation and they brought dakshina. I brought you 2 rolls of toilet paper. It would be inappropriate, to say the least. But for someone at some level to do that, although it's inappropriate, but for him, okay, very good. He's making some start. So both things are there. Exclusiveness and inclusiveness. And knowing how to apply this, that is the art of a preacher of Krishna consciousness. And everyone has to, living in the modern world, everyone has to know how to apply this in their life. Unfortunately, living in the modern world, most people have to make so many compromises, which is not very conducive actually for spiritual advancement. Anyway, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is very kind. Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama eva kevalam. Kalo nastreva, nastreva, nastreva gatiranyata. Chant Hare Krishna. So, Hare Krishna. Any question about this, please? Yeah.
In the middle part of the lecture, Guru Maharaj, you had stated how previously the various acharyas like Ramanuja and Shankaracharya took names of these personalities. They used to have these dialogues among themselves, and one, as soon as he accepts the supremacy of the other, he either surrenders and...
Well, that was the culture. If you're defeated in debate, you have to become the disciple.
But now we see a total new picture where they have this so-called interfaith.
Now, interfaith, and they're not even trying to convince each other. It's just based, these interfaith conferences are based on the idea that, well, everything's good. No one's trying to convince anyone else. But these interfaith conferences, from what I can understand, this came about because everyone was trying to convert everyone else and fighting with each other. And instead they said, well, instead of converting each other, let's just try to appreciate the good in each other. But the problem with that is that they were trying to convert each other. It was one blind faith up against another. And you can't really discuss very clearly. And then it just ends in fighting. There's no basis on which to discuss. So our approach is quite different. We don't say blind faith. We promote an intelligent approach. But very few people are intelligent enough to appreciate that. Or maybe we're not intelligent enough to intelligently present it. I just saw a video which is called The History of God. It was a video made from a book based on a book of the same name. And it actually inspired what I spoke about now, or somewhat inspiring that. in the Western world, how people have seen God, beginning with the Jews. The Jews in the ancient history, what they call ancient history, they would, people in general, they accepted that there were many gods, polytheism. And just like the Jews, they would go from one place to another, they would get banished or captured or whatever, and they would start worshipping the local gods, because they thought, well, when we were there, we worshipped those gods, now we're here, we should worship the local gods. And then Moses told them to worship the one God. And in the meantime, while Moses went up the mountain, they started worshipping some, what is now called an idol. And the whole approach is quite different. The God that Moses was talking about was very distant and a jealous God who will punish you if you don't worship him only. Whereas the Jewish people themselves, at that time, they preferred to worship all these local gods and the gods who you can talk to and sing with and dance. But this Yahweh was a very heavy character. So me only, that's it. And it showed how in the history of Christianity there have been different approaches, and trying to reconcile the idea of a very distant God who's so great and someone you can actually live with and talk with, and how in Islam, previously in Arabia, there were many gods of which Allah was the number one, but then it became that Allah is the only God and there are no other gods. So there have been different approaches, and it ended up saying that, well, what's the future going to be? Because the concept of God is always changing. But when they're talking about the future, they didn't mention at all that in the Western world, there a tremendous religious or quasi-religious or quasi-spiritual influence is there from what is called the Eastern spirituality. And the fact that Srila Prabhupada has presented for the first time God as He is, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They didn't mention it at all, which just goes to show some of the extreme narrow-mindedness of their approach. They didn't even mention it. It's very unprofessional, seeing as they're supposed to be qualified academic theologians. They just left out of the equation altogether. So that was the system. There would be debates, and whoever loses, you have to become the disciple. Otherwise, you can just choose to die if it's too much for you. That was the system. There were rules for debate. Nowadays, see, how are we going to have any debates? If people, a very simple thing, you ask people to turn off their cell phone, and 2-3 times, and still they can't do it. How are we going to have any intelligent debate on the nature of reality? Hare Nama Eva Kevalam. All right, Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavad-gita as it is ki jai. Hare Krishna.